Let me set the stage. It's the summer of 2017. Game Pass has made its way to the PC and I'm trying a bunch of games on it, when one in particular catches my eye. Ori and the Blind Forest. I'm like, oh, that's that good looking game with the spider boss I saw at E3 or something. I was completely off. I was thinking of this game's sequel that would come out a few years later. Anyway, I was playing this game and I was enjoying it. It was pretty and the animation was so fluid, the gameplay was great, the world was interesting, and I missed the DLC area and had to go back and play it after beating the game because I'm oblivious. And if you ask me what state I'm in, I'd probably say solid or depression. Anyway, Ori and the Blind Forest was an incredible game, and when the time came for the sequel to come out, I was very much ready for it. Oof. Alright, Will the Wisp isn't bad, but most of it's kind of pretty much the whole time on my first playthrough, I was like, oh, this is one of those experimental sequels, and when Ori 3 comes out, it'll be more like an even mix between Blind Forest and some of the good ideas here. Thinking about how this game needs a sequel to really fix all these issues probably isn't something Moon Studios was wanting me to think about the majority of my playthrough. I was treating this like an NES middle child, like Mario 2 USA or Zelda 2. I was like, I can't wait for like a Mario 3 or Link to the Past or something for Ori. Which after saying this game's ending... Okay, I'm probably gonna have to go a little bit deeper. I don't think those two paragraphs are sufficient to my overall thinking when it comes to Will o' the Wisps. I guess I should start by saying Will o' the Wisps ain't a bad game. In fact, if you find yourself interested in this game, I can't say you're making a bad decision by purchasing it. It isn't a bad game, I like it. But as the sequel is where my issues start to arise. Let's start with gameplay. Blind Forest is a smooth-feeling Metroidvania with an emphasis on mobility. In fact, now when I play the game, the mobility skill tree is the one I prioritize my upgrades on. Now, each ability is tied to a button on the controller, so everything Ori can do is quick and accessible at almost any moment as soon as you unlock it. And this allows you to combo your abilities together to make getting around the forest easier and easier. And this feels amazing, the control and the feel is wonderful. Will o' the Wisps has a lot of these mobility features, but it's more focused on combat than mobility. Ori gets access to weapons in this game like the sword, hammer, bow, or spear. Those weapons do have secondary things, to help you get around. For instance, the hammer lets you do the stomp move, but that was something Ori could do easily without the hammer in the first game. The weapons aren't really all that useful outside of boss fights, which the first game didn't have and was perfectly fine without. Not saying I hate the weapons, watching Ori swing the hammer around is awesome, but these weapons don't really feel like they fit Ori. Not to mention, you really don't need all these weapons. You really only need the sword or the bow to get the job done, and those are given to you. I just buy the hammer because I like it, and the spear because, why not? I didn't even bother buying the other weapons on this playthrough. In Blind Forest, you didn't need all these weapons. All your mobility in some way could be used to fight, along with auto-aiming fireballs and explosions from that little spirit that follows you around. But you don't even need that stuff once you get like the bash and can shoot enemies away or just shoot their shots back at them. Now, Will o' the Wisps does have all that mobility along with some new ways to keep on the move, but you don't have all of it available at the drop of a hat. No, since there isn't enough buttons, Will o' the Wisps decides to give you 3 empty slots that you mismatch with different abilities and weapons to use from this wheel. Now in concept, this sounds great, but in action it leads to a lot of pausing the gameplay to make sure I have this ability or that ability. Then, in the heat of the moment, I think I have one ability equipped just to find out I have another ability and now I'm dead. This kind of thing is fine in something like Zelda, but when I'm on the move like I am at Ori, I feel like having everything tied to a certain button is just much better. Will o' the Wisps has this habit of taking things that felt interesting in Blind Forest and turning them into something that's less interesting. For example, in Blind Forest you had the ability to make your own save points at any time. You could plop down a save point that would heal you and allow you access to the skill tree to upgrade your and the little spirit's abilities. In Will of the Wisps, it's the usual autosave that I guess is more convenient, but it's so much less fun. Being responsible for your own save point keeps you on your toes. And when you haven't saved and you die and finding yourself at the beginning of a painfully difficult section, that's infuriating, but it makes sure that you're always being mindful of not only saving. I mean, might as well check the skill tree while I just saved and oh look, an upgrade that helps me with this section. And since saving heals you, it incentivizes you to do it more often, always keeping the skill tree in your mind. And when you can't save because you're low on blue while in the tough area, that's intense. But does anyone even notice when you autosave in Will of the Wisps? No? Why would you? It's just like another autosave like in any other game. You do get this tree that heals you rapidly, which is cool and similar to save points, but it's mostly just here to excuse the bosses being these gauntlets. That gets on my nerves, especially the water one where you can't reliably heal in the second half and start all over if you die. Or the final boss's second half where you can't reliably heal and can barely see where the boss is even attacking you with that stupid rush move. Purple on purple. Are you guys insane? You can't see that crap on a tiny Switch screen. Also, they got rid of the skill tree, so now instead you can use light points to buy weapons, badges, and maps from NPCs. Which is so lame. And there's also NPCs that give you quests and all this other junk like, dude, Blind Forest didn't have any of this normal dime a dozen junk. You just had you, yourself, and some cutscenes where everyone else talked. Like No Smoke to Hollow Knight, I'm sure it's fantastic, and you know, I did play a little bit of it on Game Pass. But I'm pretty sure there was another game that just interested me way more on Game Pass at the time. In Blind Forest, I didn't need an incentive like quests or anything. I just liked looking around, and the stuff I found there made me more powerful, rewarding my curiosity. And Will of the Wisps does this all as well, but mostly in half rewards and quest items. I don't have an issue with any of this stuff on their own, but when you inject them into Ori, I don't think they mix all that well. Like, to go back to the boss fights, in Blind Forest, you had these platforming sections which felt more like what I've been doing the whole game. Will of the Wisps has these as well, and I'd say they are well done, but bosses replace them as these challenges at the end of dungeons, and these things that focus more on combat over mobility just feel off. When I fight a boss in a cramped arena, it doesn't feel like Ori to me. I feel I should remind you guys that I do like Will of the Wisps. In fact, if we're talking visuals and audio, then Will of the Wisps absolutely is an improvement. Just look at the animation. But in other ways, look, I think adding new things to Ori is great, and ultimately, a sequel should add on to the original. Being experimental in a sequel is a good thing, and adding things that are working in similar or even completely different games is a good thing as well. That's how games evolve and get better and better. But it all has to have the same feel. Before we get into this next part, I'm just going to say I highly recommend Blind Forest and even Will of the Wisps, and I think if you're interested in either of these games, you should play them. They're both on Game Pass, PC, Xbox, Switch. You'd think the Switch version would be inferior to the PC or Xbox, but I really can't tell a difference. They all look great, and yeah, that slowdown is in all versions to my knowledge. Maybe it's a bit better on PC or Xbox, but it's just a noticeable problem with the games themselves. Alright. Everybody, plug your ears if you care, 'cause it's time for spoilers. Yeah. So first, I'll start with the little stuff that nobody but me cares about. Which, now that I think about it, is probably this entire video. Anyway, having an owl as the main villain again is kinda lame. But maybe they wanted you to fight one, and that's fine, I guess. Having the way we help this new forest by just kinda doing the same thing again is kinda lame. And having a piece of the spirit tree be a sort of Navi is something I was genuinely surprised to see them do again after going for a good bit of the game without it in the beginning. I am happy to see they didn't bring back the whole light versus dark thing from Blind Forest, at least in any major way, because it was pretty dumb and they never really explained it. Is the light like holy? Or is it just heat? Why are normal creatures that live in the light forest so weak to it? There was just a lot of questions and a lot of stuff they just didn't explain. I'm just glad they didn't bring it back as a major theme in any way. Like, that was just so weird. We didn't need any of that. If you do bring it back in like a third Ori game, please like explain it this time, or just don't bring it back at all. Now here's the big thing. Something I was kind of sad to see was how little the family that Ori made by the end of the first game was just ignored throughout this game. I understand they weren't the focus last time. It was a little bit of a subplot happening as Ori saves the forest. But to have part of that family be a continent away while Ori tries to save another part of that family is sad to see. I would have liked to see them help Ori throughout the game, each having a section, kind of like how Ori and Ku teamed up in those two sections of the game. A large theme in Ori is family, and having Ori's family empower Ori while Shrink's absence of one and complete rejection from others drives her to a dark place? That would have been interesting. They sort of do that, but I would have liked to see it more in a gameplay sense, other than those two Ku sections. Of course, there's always time for that in the sequel. Oh. Look, I give a lot of credit to Moon Studios for ending Will of the Wisps where it did. We don't need any more long-running franchises, and I can't stress how much I respect this decision. But I also wholeheartedly disagree with it. Ori needed at least one more game to really tie all the gameplay and thematic changes together. The ending implies this may not be the ending of the series, but with Ori gone and possibly the rest of Ori's family, I feel like the trigger was pulled too early and that a lot could have been done with their story still. The fact we'll never get to see Ori and the family fly around on a fully grown Ku is a sad one. Sure, maybe the gameplay of a third Ori game would be really good, especially if Moon Studios learns from Will of the Wisps. But the heart might not be there, and that heart is Ori and the family that Ori makes. I kind of feel like a hypocrite. I mentioned Mario 2 USA before and how I compared it to this game while I was playing it, but you know, I do like Mario 2 USA. It's not even really a Mario game, it's just another title with a mustache photoshopped onto it, but I still like it. And it still feels like a Mario game to me. And there's plenty of other games I like where you'd think I'd be critical of them as sequels, but I'm not. Maybe because they still have the same feel to the series, but that's pretty subjective, isn't it? It's like that Paper Mario on the Wii with the world-ending junk that traumatized me when I was younger. By the way, sorry if there's no game footage here. I think I got rid of that game after it freaked me out, so sorry about the slideshow you're about to see. Anyway, it's got all the same elements of previous Paper Mario games, but more emphasis on platforming and none of the turn-based battles. So if you like the turn-based stuff, you really wouldn't say this is a good sequel in your eyes, would you? Like all the RPG elements and other Paper Mario stuff is here, but it's not really what you like in Paper Mario, so it's hard to say it's a good sequel to you. It doesn't have that feel you enjoy. On the other hand, if you for some reason wanted more platforming in Paper Mario, or you wanted more combat in Ori, then these would be good sequels to you, right? Wrong? I don't know. This is all subjective, and I guess what I'm trying to say here is, if you think Will of the Wisp is a good sequel, I really don't have that much of an argument for you. This is mostly just what I like versus what some other people like. You know, it's kind of hard to say what the feel of a series should be when there's only really been 2 games, you know? This is all just subjective, and that just kind of makes it hard to say anything definitively. I'm not really sure how to end this video. Oh, how about I end it on a theory I have for Ori? You see, I think the owl eggs have the ability to give a hatchling an immunity to what killed its parents, with the trade-off of having a physical disability. For instance, the light that killed Ku's mother and siblings doesn't seem to have an effect on Ku, but her right wing isn't fully developed. And the plague or curse or darkness or whatever killed Shriek's parents, they didn't really explain that. Anyway, the thing that killed Shriek's parents, Shriek has the ability to control it. But now she has to wear this weird bone suit and walk around on her wings, which makes all the other Owls hate her. Yeah, there's a lot of depressing owl stuff in Ori. We went from a grieving mother owl to a lonely orphan owl. I don't know what they're going to do in Ori 3, but there's probably going to be a sad owl somewhere.